We're here to talk about Silicon Valley real estate market analytics and then finish up with the Greater Bay Area, which is 13 counties and 5 regions. The goal of this video is to bring you up to date on what the real estate market's doing locally and currently. This helps you in determining what price to offer on a house, just useful background information on what to expect if you're a buyer. I'm Richard Calhoun, real estate broker with Creekside Realty. My contact number is there for you, and we'll get back to this slide towards the end. Here's the first heat map. What this is doing is showing the active inventory today compared to normal, and it's in a percentage. For example, if we take the Campbell, Cambrian, Santa Clara, and Willow Glen area, it's only 67% or 2/3 the volume of active listings that there normally is. In other words, you're missing 1/3 the inventory. Foster City is missing half the inventory, but I didn't highlight that because Foster City Redwood Shores is a very small micro market, both geographically and in the number of listings. So I'm trying to point out relatively reasonable size areas that would give you an idea. But you can see there are a few half dozen areas that are pink in color, which means a shortage of inventory. The bulk of the Silicon Valley area is white in color, and that means it's somewhere between 87.5% and 112.5% of normal. Basically 12.5% of either side of normal. Moving on and looking at the offers, it's the same thing. Here there's a dramatic shortage of offers, as you can see by everything being in blue. That means there's less offers being accepted. And you can see Alameda County is at 77%, and I don't have that broken down in each region, just for the county-wide, and that's why all the numbers are the same. In Santa Clara County, which is 1 through 17, and in San Mateo County, 21 through 26. I did the first digit is the county, so 1 is Santa Clara, 2 is San Mateo, and 3 is Alameda County. 4 is your index. Basically, in both Santa Clara and San Mateo County, in each of the areas, there was a shortage of inventory. The expensive areas right along the San Mateo, Santa Clara County border are sort of balanced, but other than that, there's a shortage of inventory. Now what becomes important is where does the shortage of inventory versus the shortage of offers compare to each other? And you can see here, this is measured in days unsold inventory, which is the speed of the marketplace, and it's pretty much exactly normal. In Alameda County, you're actually 6% above where you'd expect it to be, so it's that slightly slower. In Santa Clara County, you're basically on each side of 100%, but mostly above. The only area that is below is Cupertino Sunnyvale, which is typically a fairly fast-paced marketplace. And San Mateo County is basically on both sides, but again, slightly more above normal than below, which would tend to indicate a slower than normal marketplace. You do need to remember that Silicon Valley does have a fast-paced marketplace, so slower than normal is still fast-paced. Now we're dropping, comparing to normal, and just looking at what the values are today. And this is basically my benchmark where everything under 6 weeks is a fast marketplace, from 6 to 11 weeks is a balanced marketplace, and above 11 weeks is a slow marketplace. You can see the only area that's slow is the expensive areas at 86 days. So just slightly above the 77 threshold of getting a shade of blue. The fastest area we have is Cupertino Sunnyvale at 21 days, just over 3 weeks, and that's why it's the brightest red. Mostly you're fairly fast. San Mateo County is, faster than Santa Clara County in general, but it's normally faster than Santa Clara. Now they're roughly even. Here's days on market. Days on marketing is marketing time. This is just simply what does it take 3/4 of the sellers to sell their properties? How long are they on the marketplace? And here, anything under 3 weeks is pink in color, and you can see there's a fair number of areas in Santa Clara County, with the fastest being Milpitas, North Valley, Blossom Valley, and Santa Teresa at only 16 days. So basically, that's 2 weekends. You come on a Wednesday, you turn around and look at your offer, not the following, but the second out, the Thursday, and you're basically at your 16 days. So it's a fairly fast-paced marketplace. The slowest area is the San Mateo County coast at 68 days, and that is clearly above the 6 days of getting a shade of blue. Now what we're doing is we're looking at the seller's ask price adjustments, and the biggest one in the negative direction is San Mateo County coast. And there's no price increases, and you might think, wow, does that really happen? Yes, there are price increases, but the smallest price decrease is going to be in the Union City, Newark area, also in the Milpitas area, but I'm trying to pick out different regions, at only 0.3% of a price reduction. And what you find out that means is somewhere around 10–15% of the sellers are taking significant price reductions, But that also means that 85% of the sellers are taking no price reductions. And that's why these numbers are so small, because it's the average, which includes a large percentage of the market at zero adjustment at all. This is the frequency of price adjustments. So you can see in the Milpitas, North Valley, Berryessa, Blossom Valley, Santa Teresa area, it's got the least frequent of adjustments at only 7% of the sellers adjusting in the downward direction. The area that's having the largest price increase is the San Mateo County coast, where 63%, almost 2/3 of the sellers have done a price reduction before they get their offer in. You can see there is quite a range. It is unusual to see any number as high as 63 in the local area. And you can see that because the second largest is Oakland at only 27% of a price adjustment. So 1 out of 4 sellers adjusting the prices, where the fastest is something like 1 out of 15, if I'm doing my math right. Well, now, if you look at the magnitude of overbidding, this is flipping over and seeing what the buyers are doing. And even though this is current data, for the most part, the average escrow is 4 to 6 weeks. So if you say there's a 5-week time lag in getting this information, that's probably reasonable. But again, you can see most of the areas are overbidding by some. Pleasanton's the smallest at 0%. And then you have Berkeley and City of Alameda at 15% overbidding. But in general, the overbidding is somewhere around 5% would be a rough estimate. And you can see the whole map is basically a shade of pink. Now you're looking at the frequency of overbidding. So how common is overbidding? And here you can see there's some areas like Atherton that only 50% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. And that may almost sound crazy, but there is a large amount of overbidding that occurs. You can go down to Foster City, another small area, at 100%. But the biggest large geographical areas, Hayward, San Leandro, and San Lorenzo, at 81% of the sellers are getting more than they're asking. That's this area right up in here. So 81% of the sellers are getting more than their asking price. And it's also higher at 82% in Berkeley and Alameda, but we've already talked about them, so I'm trying to move it around. Now we're going to talk about Fremont. Fremont's got the highest appreciation at 99% appreciation, and that's since the last 9 months of 2015. You can see that basically your San Mateo County area has got the lowest rate of appreciation. And I believe that's tied into the pandemic. People used to want to live in this area and they paid a high premium to live in that area. With pandemic and remote working and having to commute into work less often, the amount of premium buyers were willing to pay to live in this area decreased. And since that's all happened since 2015, it's got the lower rate of appreciation. Some of the outlying areas that used to be less desirable have the highest rate of appreciations. And again, the Fremont area right through here has got the highest appreciation, almost doubling your money since 2015. And there are several honorable mentions in Santa Clara County, that Milpitas, North Valley, Berryessa, Blossom Valley, Santa Teresa area has 90% appreciation. Campbell, Cambrian, Santa Clara, Willow Glen's got 88% appreciation. Saratoga, Las Gatas, 92% or 93%. Now we move on to sold price. Here, the color is simply where are the expensive areas in the red and where are the cheap areas in the blue. So it's clearly the outlying areas that are more affordable. And on the prices, the middle number is the median for that geographical area. The number to the left is the least expensive 10 percentile, and the number to the left is the most expensive. If we pick on, say, Campbell area again, we have 14.5, so $1.45 million, just a little less than $1.5 million, is the cheapest single family home you'd expect to find in that area. The median priced home in that area is right at 1.9 million, and the most expensive home you'd expect to find is 2.6. Now that isn't saying you can't find a more expensive home than 2.6, because 10% of the homes will sell for more than that. It's just unlikely if you're a buyer looking, you're going to be able to find something above that price range. And here's a summary table of what we've been going over, starting off with the active listings compared to normal, the number of offers compared to normal. And now the yellow highlights are ones that are giving you leading indicators, because this is the speed of the marketplace compared to normal. And if it's slower than normal, you probably have a slow market. If it's hotter than normal, you probably have a hot marketplace. And then the DUI is a measure of how quick the market's turning over right now, not comparing it to the 10-year median in the past. So this is just raw numbers. Days on market, this is on there for the person who doesn't like a lot of manipulation of data. Simply, how long does it take 3 out of 4 sellers to sell? What is the seller's average price reduction, the frequency of that price reduction? All indicators of what the market's doing. The frequencies are pretty low, and I may just have the color off since it's a new metric, but you can see pretty low across the board with the San Mateo County coast being the highest. Yeah, the magnitude and frequency of overbidding. The reason these are dark orange is they're lagging indicators. You need to wait for that 3 to 6 weeks for escrows to close. The rate of appreciation, and you can see the middle of the area here has the least appreciation. And as it turns out, some of the outlying areas have the most appreciation. And then you have your sold price, then 10, median, and 90 percentile, as well as I've added in the monthly payments. And that assumes an 80% loan at the Freddie Mac. So it's jumbo conforming money on the national level. The interest rate was 6.46, and you can do better than that. And you can go into an adjustable rate loan and things of that to get the payment down and also put more down payment. Now we're looking at the days on market, the distribution. So you start off here with 10% of the sellers are selling in basically something like 5 days. And then you come up here and you have something like 90% of the sellers selling in under 50 days. And you have a weekly distribution. The blue dotted dash line down here is last year. The purple dotted dash line up here is this year. You can see the market is significantly cooler than this year. If we use my 75th percentile benchmark, the numbers are going to be something like 18 days to market the property last year. And this year it's 26 days. So 8 days longer, just one day over a week longer to market the 3/4 of the property. And we'll step through and see how it goes. So you're starting off a year ago and you got the dotted lines, the oldest data, and you're going to be coming up here. And one of those two is the peak of the marketplace. Now you're accelerating. So you're going up to the spring run up. And now that's the peak. And now you're on the dash line, some more recent lines, and we're slowing down. And in a couple more weeks, we're going to get to the solid lines. I think the next one, yep, right there. So these are the most recent data, but again, you can see the general trend is slowing down. But if you notice, right there is probably the slowest in the last week and this week. So the last 2 weeks we've picked up a little bit, but you're basically on the downward trend. You know that last year you started going up, which was a slowing marketplace. So at this time of the year, the market tends to slow down. It is still a fast-paced marketplace because as you came out here and see, it's something like 75% of the homes sell in under 26 days. Now we're doing the same thing on price reductions. So this year, the purple dotted dash line is down here, which is a cooler marketplace than we were last year. More sellers are taking the same percent price reduction, or the same percentage of sellers are taking larger price reductions, however you want to look at it. The line moves up and down sort of along this straight diagonal line here. We're starting off a year ago with the blue dash dotted line, and then we'll start with dotted lines for the last month, and we go a month at a time, and that's either 4 or 5 weeks, because I don't do anything on the monthly calendar. Everything's on a weekly calendar because of the weekly cycle of real estate. But here you're starting 11 months ago, 10 months ago. You can see the slowdown. That's about the bottom. Now you're already running up for the spring, a little bit of a bounce there, a huge jump there. Now you're going to be at the peak of the market right there 4 months ago. Here's your slowdown starting with the dashed lines. And you can see you're marching down slowly. And again, you're going to see that next to solid lines, see there's a little bounce. That was an up and then back down. And another up and then back down. And now that's the lowest, which was the last week. And now your slight improvement this week. That's probably just a bounce. In general, you expect to see more and more price reductions as the year goes on. Silicon Valley has a very predictable real estate cycle on an annual basis. Now we're looking at the buyers overbidding. So what are the buyers doing? So these are closer together, but again, the purple line, the current line, is lower than the blue line, which is the last year's data. So the market's cooler because this is the record cool year we had down here. This is the record hot year we had. So that's the maximum range you're going to expect to see unless we have a record-breaking year. And now you're going to start there, bouncing around a little bit. And now you're going to cool down for the end of the year. That's the bottom, January 24th. Then you're doing the spring run up. That's the peak, April 26th. And now you're basically drifting down. And again, like the last two indicators, you're going to see the last couple of weeks bounced a little bit. But let's wait till we get there. In solid lines, the most recent data, basically marching right down. But right there is lower than that. Last week it was lower than the current week. So we've improved a little bit. But again, that's where the market was most likely about 5 weeks ago. But basically, you're in this cool down period of the year with a little bounce, just statistical fluctuation. So now here's a recap of what we've gone over in the past 13 weeks. And I actually have 14 weeks, so it's the past quarter. This is the current week over here, going back 14 weeks. So this is basically quarter ago plus the bookend of the week. You started off 14 weeks ago with 2,291, call it 2,300 active listings. That's 88% of the normal listings. You can see the gray line here. That's the normal. That's based on the 10-year median. The blue is the cool market level. In case of inventory, the most inventory you'd expect. The red is the least number of inventory you'd expect. You come out to current date and you're at 2,500. So you've gained 200 listings roughly, but your percentage has dropped down by basically 3.5% to 85%. So it's still a shortage of inventory, but you can see the distance. The percentage of the gray line is lower than it was back here. So you've gained a little bit of inventory, but normally the market gains more inventory than we've gained. So you've lost ground compared to that 10-year median. Now, looking at the offers accepted, you'll notice the blue line's lower down in this case because a low number of offers is a cool marketplace. A high number of offers is a hot marketplace, as indicated by the red line. The gray line is where you'd expect the market to be. In this case, we started off with 2,400 offers at 80.5%. And now you're ending up at 2,100. So you have 300 fewer offers, but you're basically unchanged on a percentage basis. You're at 80 and at 80.6, so a 10% better than you were at the beginning of the quarter. But it's also interesting, at the beginning of the quarter, you were below the least number of offers you'd expect, which would be the blue line, and now you're above. But the percentage that you're seeing here, that's 80%, is based on the distance away from the gray line. And it doesn't look that way to me just looking at it, but I trust my computer, but I will look into that, because what I'm saying, this gray line is almost flat, and yet your purple line's improved quite a bit, but it's telling me the percentage is unchanged. So I will investigate that, but I believe at this point in time that those percentages are correct. Now we're doing the same thing on DUI, but now a higher DUI is a slower marketplace, which is why the blue line's on the top. And 14 weeks ago, we had 33 days to sell our inventory, which was 8.5% slower than normal. Now you've slowed down because you're 41 days to sell all the inventory, the existing rate of sales if no new listings came on the market. It's a theoretical number, it's your turn rate, but at 41 days of unsold inventory, and it's actually improved because now it's down at 3.5% above normal. So you've improved by 5%. 5% improvement is really not a huge improvement, but you can see that you're definitely closer to the gray line here, which would be a lower percentage than you are over here. And so that number does make absolute sense. Moving on to days to sell your marketing time. And this is that 3 out of 4 sellers. And again, here you can see that the blue line, a slow marketplace, is longer marketing time, because the longer it takes the market to sell, the slower the marketplace is. The gray line is the normal, and you can see we started off below normal at 82% of normal at only 14 days. Now, 14 weeks later, you're at 104%, so you're above the gray line, and you're at 24 days. So you've added 10 days to sell 3 out of 4 listings, and you've gained 25% of the marketing time has gone up 25% compared to normal. So that's a pretty significant slowdown. It's a slowdown a little bit more than normal because you went from below the gray line, you caught up to the gray line here. Basically, what would that be, about 9 weeks ago? Followed the gray line all the way up until, I would say, even maybe last week you slightly above, but I would even say that that's following the gray line, because you're going to have some statistical movement from year to year. One of the reasons I use the 10-year median is a lot of people compared to last year, and now you're comparing to one year to another year, and if you have movement in either line, you have a huge change in your data. By using a 10-year median, I try to balance it out and get some sort of normal measure to compare the current marketplace to. This is sellers' ask price reductions. This is their expectations compared to reality. You can see we started off with a 0.5% price reduction. Now we're at a full percent price reduction. So the amount of price reductions has doubled, but notice that the percentage of normal is it basically 24% more than normal. Now you're 25% more than normal. And the negative sign's in there because it's a decrease. So basically, you're having an absolute normal pattern with just slightly bigger, larger price reductions this year than over the past 10 years. And overbidding, we started off at 9.7% overbidding. You're down to 5.7% now. So you've lost 4 percentage points in the seller's ask price by the amount the buyers are overbidding. And that was 2.9% above normal. So normal would have been about 6.8%. Now you're only 0.5% above normal. So the normal amount of overbidding at this time of the year is 5.2. So you can see the market normally cools down as indicated by the gray line, and the absolute market, the purple market, has slowed down more. Now it is noteworthy that a hot marketplace slows down a lot more than the normal marketplace. With a real cyclic, you don't compare to horizontal, you have to compare to what the market's typically doing. Now we're looking long-term, and we're looking at all of Silicon Valley. So it's all the 20 micro market areas that we've been looking in the 3 counties in a blender mixed together. Inventory is right here, and we have a shortage of inventory because we're basically around 85% now, but it's climbing. So we're getting more inventory than you typically do at this time of the year. The number of offers is also down and climbing, but climbing at a slower rate. If that continues, your inventory is going to grow and the market will slow down, but the number of offers is going to lag behind the increased inventory a little bit. In other words, new inventory for this weekend hasn't had time to have had offers on it. We may see that the number of offers picks up a little bit next week. Up here, the DUI, the speed of the marketplace, you can actually see that slow down just this last week. But again, it could be a lag time. And I have sort of noticed that it does seem, as this data indicates, that more listings are coming on the marketplace than typically do at this time of the year. Still less than normal, but more, an increasing number. Here's your Silicon Valley inventory. So now we're just looking at inventory. Here, the red line is your annual cycle. You have a condensed cycle from January 1st of 2014 through January 1st of 2023. And that's so I can get a lot of data on here for you. Then you have 2023 in a more expanded horizontal axis, so you can see what the normal pattern is. And then you can see the normal pattern in this year, what we're doing. The gray line is absolutely normally, that's where you'd expect the market to be if the market's behaving as it has for the past 10 years. Red is where you'd expect it to be in a hot marketplace, a shortage of inventory, and a blue is if it was a cool marketplace with lots of inventory. You can see you're basically following the normal pattern, but you're lower inventory. You're between a hot marketplace and a normal marketplace, more or less following the normal pattern. And you can see you have this bounce even in your 10-year cycle. So that's 10 years. And this bounce here is July the 4th. This year's bounce was bigger on July the 4th. And that's because a lot of people turned July 4th into a full week holiday because it fell midweek on a Thursday. Here's that same information, just pulling out that gray line. And where are you compared to normal? Since July 4th, we've been losing inventory, but in the last week, we've turned around and we've started increasing compared to normal. Here's looking at offers. Now your offers are below the least number of offers you'd expect. So we are having a real shortage of offers. You'd expect your offers to be up here somewhere around 2,700 offers accepted, and you're below 2,100. You're somewhere around 2,075 offers. So a real shortage of offers, but it's following the normal pattern more or less. And because we're been cool, it's sort of following the market of a cool marketplace. So where do you expect it to be? You know, basically unchanged for next week. Here's the same information pulled out. So you can see that the number of offers have been growing a little bit recently in recent weeks, but we're still way below. We're basically at 76% of normal. Here's looking days unsold inventory. So this is the speed of the marketplace, and you expect it to be on the gray line. So now you're above the gray line, below the blue. So you're between a normal and a slow marketplace, and you're slowing down as you typically do at this time of the year. So the market is slowing, and it is slower than it typically is, but not by a lot. And right now it's basically following the normal pattern. So here you're seeing that your speed of the marketplace, your days of unsold inventory, has been just right at normal last week. Now it's gone up a little bit, maybe what, 2%, 3% above normal. So just slightly slower than normal and slowing down slightly compared to where you'd expect it to be. Here's looking at the marketing time. Again, this is what 75% of the sellers are able to sell their home in less than this time. And that looks to be 24 days. So right now, sellers are selling fairly quickly and they're right on the typical line. They're slightly above it. Because the normal market dipped down this 1 week, it's going to be a cooling marketplace on the next graph, which is on a percentage basis, but I would call it unchanged. So here's your cooling down, but that was just the 1 week perturbation. And you can see there's a lot of jaggedness in this data. And, I'm looking for data that gives you trends the best you can. But right now, you're basically right at the normal level of inventory. We're looking at the price reductions for the sellers that take the largest 10% price reductions. And that's basically falling. And you can see it normally falls at this time, which in this case is an increasing amount of price reductions, because this would be 84% of your original ask price. This would be 90%. So 10% of the sellers are taking larger than a 10% price reduction. And right now they're taking larger than 12. I would say that's 12.5%. So right now, the sellers that are taking the largest price reductions are taking a 12.5% price reduction. And normally they're up here somewhere around 10.5%. So they're taking a full 2% larger price reduction than they typically do in order to track the offer. And again, the gray line is where you'd expect the amount of decrease to be. The red is the least you'd expect the decrease to be, and the blue is the most you'd expect the decrease to be. Here is the 10 percentile compared to normal. So you can see they're up here taking larger than normal price reductions, almost 20% larger than normal. And they've been doing that for almost the past year, at least for the last 3 quarters. Last quarter of 2023 and most of 2024, sellers have been doing a 20% more price reductions than they would typically do. This is the average of those price reductions. So now you've gone from a number somewhere around 12.5% price reduction to only a 1% price reduction. And that's because we're looking at everybody, but average is a more common metric. So I put that in there for completeness. You can see that the amount of price reductions increases because 0 price reduction was here. Greater price reductions are coming down because they're negative in direction. Your typical marketplace is right here on the gray line. And then the blue line would be way more price reductions than you typically expect. And red would be a lot less price reductions than you'd expect. And you can see the normal marketplace turns around and goes up here. So this is basically following a normal pattern. You have a little reprieve, it seems, right as school starting. And then you have a continuation of the increasing price reductions as you get towards the end of the year. Here's the average price reduction versus typical. So you can see you're bouncing around and you're basically right now level with basically, that would be no price reduction. This must be 1%. So you're taking a slightly larger price reduction than you typically do. Here's the frequency of those price reductions. Now the frequency of price reductions is right on the normal line and has been this whole time. So what it's saying is the number of sellers that need to adjust their prices remains unchanged, but those sellers that need the price change are taking larger price reductions than they normally do. And because it's following the gray line, I would expect no change on the next graph. And here you are, and basically you're horizontal. You're a little bit above and a little bit below. You're bouncing on both sides of the gray line, but basically following that normal pattern. Here's your overbidding. So now we're flipping over and seeing what the buyers are doing. And again, now this is delayed data. And you can see that earlier this year, buyers were overbidding significantly more than they typically do. Typically, you're overbidding somewhere down here around 4.5% above the asking price. And instead, you were overbidding up here somewhere around percent above. And right now, you're basically down on the normal curve, very close to it, but you've pulled away this last week. So I'd expect the market on the next slide to be showing it getting a little bit hotter. And here you are getting a little bit hotter. Here's the frequency of overbidding. So how common is overbidding? And on the frequency of overbidding, you're basically right on. It was a little bit more frequent basically during second quarter, but first quarter and third quarter have been basically normal. This week, there was a slight increase in the amount of overbidding. So you've had a turn, and so we'll see it going to a hotter marketplace on the next slide. And sure enough, here you can see the turn and going on a hotter marketplace. It's more common right now for buyers to overbid than it typically is. Here's the long-term price appreciation. This is on log paper. So this blue hanged line is sort of the typical rate of appreciation you'd expect. And there's two patterns that are very consistent on this graph. One is this V down at the end of every year, and the other one is the U up, basically first quarter delayed by half a quarter. So basically halfway first quarter through halfway through second quarter, you have this run up and then you turn around and loop down. What does that tell you if you have flexibility of when you want to sell? You basically want to sell right at the end of first quarter typically, because you'll be closing right at the peak of here a couple weeks later. And you also want to be able to close an escrow while the market's still going up. Otherwise, you have a transaction that fails. And then you can turn around and look at that price down. So as a buyer, you want to buy right at the end of fourth quarter when there's very little inventory available. And then you'll have that big run up. Because there's a huge penalty for missing the mark, and depending on how hard it is for you to find things, basically you want to, as a buyer, you want to really buy in that Halloween to Thanksgiving timeframe. So you're buying and then closing right at the bottom of the marketplace, and then you run up and get the appreciation the following couple years. There are a couple exceptions, but they're basically outside things like COVID. COVID, you basically had the typical rate of appreciation versus the huge downturn because the market was so superheated. And then even the year after COVID in 2021, it was flat. But as soon as we got it all past COVID, you return to that normal pattern. And we're clearly having the normal pattern this year. And we're below, if you come back to the beginning of fourth quarter, we're below the beginning of fourth quarter prices now. So the price this year is actually lower than the price last year for the same time of the year. Here's the estimated payments. You can see payments are coming down a little bit because of prices are coming down and a little bit because of interest rates are coming down. But I almost am inclined to add in my horizontal line because you could come back here and see the payments now are basically the same as they were end of first quarter of 2023. Yes, they're higher than they were in 2022 and earlier than that, but both prices and interest rates are up. But again, there are a lot of people that purchased earlier this year with higher payments and even last year with higher payments. It is interesting looking at the rough estimates of PITI payments. Now what we're doing is leaving behind all of Silicon Valley, and we're focusing on the three individual counties that make up Silicon Valley: Santa Clara County in the blue, Alameda County in the gray, and San Mateo County in the orange. San Mateo County has the smallest geographical area, and it's basically got the same to maybe slightly more inventory than it typically did. I would probably call it very similar level of inventory. In Santa Clara County, you're basically have the least compared to normal would be my guess, just looking at the graph, because Alameda County and Santa Clara County are normally fairly close together. There was one exception here in 2017 and 18 when Santa Clara County was really on fire and took off, and it wasn't shared by the other two counties. And Alameda County has significantly more inventory. So Alameda County is more normal than Santa Clara. So it looks like Santa Clara has the biggest shortage of inventory. But even though it's got the bigger shortage of inventory, it's got more offers than Alameda County. So its speed is going to be far faster than Alameda County. And San Mateo County is lower number of offers with the same to more inventory. So it's going to be a slower pace than it typically is. So here, if you come back in history, you can see that San Mateo County was typically the fastest county. That changed with pandemic. And here it basically came out and it was on top. But then it was so hot, everybody was the same. But as soon as the market slowed down at all, San Mateo County came back on the top. And only recently is Alameda County showing up as being the slowest. So right now, Alameda County, and for the last couple of weeks, Alameda County is the slowest county as measured on days unsold inventory, then San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County is the fastest with a DUI of just about 35 days. Here's your days on market for 75% of the sellers. So this means 3 out of 4 sellers are selling more rapidly than this. In Santa Clara County, it's at 22 days on the marketplace for Santa Clara County. San Mateo County is 28 days, and Alameda County is the slowest at 31 days. And so this is the time it takes 3 out of 4 sellers to sell. So from Alameda County at 31 days to Santa Clara at 22 days, there's a 9-day slower marketplace. So it's taking 9 days longer just within the county. And I'll point out that that means that it's really hard to use one number to indicate what's going on across the Bay Area, which is why I came up with the 20 micro market areas. Here's the magnitude of price reductions. So this is how much the sellers are doing price reductions. San Mateo County is doing the largest price reductions at something around 1.3% price reduction. Alameda County at 1.2% price reductions, and Santa Clara County having the least price reductions at only 0.8%, so 0.8% price reduction, so less than 1%. 99, that would be 1% down here. Here's the ask price frequency, so the frequency of those price reductions. You can see Alameda County is doing the most price reductions. San Mateo County is doing the next, and then Santa Clara County is doing the least amount of price reductions. And Santa Clara County is doing it at about 14%, San Mateo 16%, and Alameda County is at 19% of the sellers are doing price reductions. So less than 1 in 5 sellers in all 3 counties are doing price reductions. This is the flipping over and looking at what the buyers are doing or overbidding. Even though Alameda County was one of the slower counties, I think it was the absolute slowest, it's got the most overbidding, and that doesn't make sense unless you take the argument that Alameda County had the most price reductions. So sellers are coming on the market that because of the longer marketing time, they're reducing their price, and then buyers are coming along and overbidding that new reduced price. And then Santa Clara County, that had the fastest marketplace, had the least amount of overbidding. There is a discontinuity currently between the marketing time and the amount of overbidding. Why that's happening, anyone can guess. I don't try to figure out why the market's doing what it does. I just report on what the market's doing the best I can. Here's the frequency of overbidding. So Alameda County has the most frequent overbidding at 70%. Santa Clara County has the middle at about 66%, and San Mateo County has the least amount of overbidding at 64%. That's still almost 2/3 of the sellers are getting more than their asking price, and I'm talking about that being the least amount of overbidding. Here's the long-term appreciation. Santa Clara County has the most appreciation, to somewhere around 83% appreciation since the last 9 months of 2015. Alameda County and San Mateo County are pretty close together at, looks like, 62% for San Mateo County and 64% for Alameda County. Here's your long-term sale price. So Alameda County is the more affordable area. You can see it's basically back to the price level it was in 2021. Santa Clara County is next and still above where it was in 2021. And San Mateo County is the most expensive county and right back at where it was in 2021. So long term, both San Mateo and Alameda County are back to the prices they were in 2021. Santa Clara County has done a little bit better and is still above the prices level it was in 2021. Here's the same information on regular paper. The previous was on logarithmic paper for those that prefer regular. Here's the estimated payments. You can see that San Mateo County has the most expensive payment. It's going to be in the same order as their price because, you know, the formula I apply is the same. And Alameda County is the most affordable down here. It's something like $9,300 for a monthly payment on the typical house in Alameda County. This slide is up here mostly to point out that we only sold 2,072 homes. Yes, you're up significantly from last year at only 1,700 homes. So we're 17% above last year's level, but we're only 3/4, 77% of the 10-year median. And we're the 9th slowest year. So this is the 2nd slowest year. And it's the 23rd out of the last 25 years. So there's 2 years that's slower. Last year was the slowest year at 1,772. Then it was way back to 2007 with 1,975 offers accepted. Now, keep in mind, there is a chance this number here will decrease over the next several weeks to below or very close to that 1978. So this 23rd slowest year may actually become the 24th slowest year. But basically, it's tied for the least amount of offers accepted other than last year. And you can see last year had the record for several of these past recent weeks. So last year was definitely not a year to write home about. And that was because we had the large decrease in prices and people were wondering where the market was going to be going. Here you're looking at the actual raw information for all of Silicon Valley. If you want to look at what the region's doing as a whole, for Santa Clara County individually, San Mateo County and Alameda County, all individual. You can come down and read the actual numbers. You can see that the number of new listings decreased in Santa Clara County, was actually unchanged in San Mateo, and decreased a little bit in Alameda County. In general, I'd expect less and less listings coming on the marketplace. Inventory across all three regions increased. The least increase was in Alameda County at 4%. The most was in Santa Clara County at 6.6% increase. Offers increased in Santa Clara and mostly in San Mateo County, and for an increase overall. Anyway, you can go through and look at whatever numbers. We have been talking about the Silicon Valley real estate market analytics for August 24th. We will be talking about the Greater Bay Area in just a few minutes. The blue up here is my YouTube archive URL. If you want less typing, you can type in this green URL, which I call my green root URL. And that's sort of key, because if you add in 2024 to it Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, you can join this presentation live and ask questions. If it does ask for the passcode, meaning passcode on Zoom, it's right there for you. The handout is up for anyone that wants it. You type in the green root URL plus H for handout, 2024-08-24, today's date. You can change this and get old episodes or future episodes after we get to the future date. And if you want to see a specific episode, you just type in the green root URL and the year, month, date code, and it takes you to it. I'm Richard Calhoun with Creekside Realty. My contact information. I would appreciate it if you would subscribe and like the videos. It helps out on the YouTube algorithm and lets more people know this information is out there. Moving on to the Greater Bay Area, we're now looking at 5 regions. The first region is Silicon Valley, which is in Santa Clara County, San Mateo, and Alameda County that we've been talking about. The next one is San Francisco and Marin, which I call the cities. Then you have the North Bay, which is Sonoma, Napa, Solano, and Contra Costa County. The Central Valley, which is San Joaquin and Sacramento, and Central Coast, which is Santa Cruz and Monterey. Here you're looking at the 5 regions, what they're doing. You can see inventory is increasing in all 5 regions. The only real exception would be the cities here, which is sort of more than anything flat. But basically all the four regions are definitely going up or on an upward trend. The North Bay and the gray is sort of leveled off. And even the Silicon Valley is sort of leveled off, but the trend is still up until it reverses and comes down. And you can see we're not far away from that, because all you have to do is go back in time and see the market sort of peaks as far as the most active inventory. In fact, I would say active inventory is increasing or flat later than it typically is. This is looking at the number of offers. You can see that offers have increased significantly in the Central Valley and in the North Bay in the last several weeks. And instead of decreasing in Silicon Valley, it's reverse trend and is basically a plateau, as I'd call it. Central Coast down here in the blue is sort of on a slow climb. The city's rolled over and then it's returned to a climb. And again, this is unusual to be seeing these numbers increase. But again, you can see there is this run up right. If you take this vertical line, this is the end of 3rd quarter, beginning of 4th quarter. There was a rise last year beforehand. If you come back here, there was a rise beforehand. So now you come here. So this is probably that rise before the end of 3rd quarter that we're in right now. Here's your days unsold inventory. Silicon Valley is basically flat. I would call the cities flat. I would call the Central Valley and the North Bay both decreasing, which is an improving marketplace. And the Central Coast is increasing, which is a slowing marketplace. So you have 2 areas that are definitely improving, and then 3 areas that are probably close to flat, maybe slowing. Here's your marketing time. Marketing time for all 5 regions is climbing. There might be a rollover here in this last week, but until you have 3 data points, you really don't have a trend. So I would say all 5 regions are still climbing, which is the increased time for 3 out of 4 sellers to sell their properties. Here's your price reductions. Look at the drop in price in the Central Coast, and I suspect that's more market mix than actual property values. North Bay has been coming down quite a bit. Basically, the only area that isn't going down right now on price is the cities, which is markedly going up. Here's your frequency of seller price reductions. You can see they're all climbing, except for the cities, which is seeming to be having a little bit of a rebirth of the marketplace here, where the frequency of price reductions has been flat and actually going down a little bit with 1 out of 5 sellers. You can see that you get up here into the Central Valley in the yellow, and you have something almost approaching a third of your sellers doing a price reduction. Covered up by the yellow is the gray for North Bay. You can see it right through here and a little bit right through here. We're just above the yellow line. You can see it's there. So they were both approaching 1 out of 3 sellers doing price reductions. You come down to the cities, it's 1 out of 5. And you come into Silicon Valley where we're spoiled and it's only about 1 out of 6, 1 out of 6.5 sellers doing a price reduction. Here's the buyers coming in and doing their overbidding. You can see it's going down in basically all the regions long term. If you look carefully, the cities and Silicon Valley may have done a U-turn last week, one more point that starts doing a trend. You can see there is some bounce in the line, but I strive to find data that is fairly steady so that when there's a change, it's time to pay attention. And I would say it's time to pay attention. Here's the frequency of overbidding. It's also basically leveling off in Silicon Valley, definitely turned and down a slight increase this week over last week in the cities. The other areas are basically flat on the frequency of buyer overbidding. Here's the long-term appreciation. The cities is by far the worst appreciation, and you can see there was a run up and then coming back down. And you've sort of had that U-shaped in the last 3 years. And you know, then you come up here to the North Bay. It's got the next lowest appreciation, but still getting very respectable. It's something like 66% appreciation. And then you come in close together, the Central Coast, it's something approaching 77%. Silicon Valley at 80% appreciation, and the Central Valley, the affordability and more desirability of the Central Valley, the longer commutes with remote workings, has had a 90% appreciation. So that's the highest appreciation since the last 9 months, 2015. And again, if you come back, you can see that all the regions were basically doing the same up until the pandemic. You can see the 2018 stick out of Silicon Valley, but they've all been doing the same. But since the pandemic, the cities quickly fell down to the bottom, and then the North Bay took a little bit longer, but quickly fell down to the bottom. And then your other 3 regions are doing fairly well and fairly consistently. Here's the median price. So you can see that Silicon Valley is now more expensive by quite a bit, almost by $50,000, because this would be 1.6 million. This is 1.5. So you're there. So this is, so the cities is basically at $1.5 million. And this is at 1,550,000. Central Coast, you know, is still coming down. I would call the North Bay basically flat. North Bay prices, if you look at it, tend to be very stable compared to the other regions. And then the Central Valley is probably the most stable on pricing, and it's rolled over. So prices are decreasing right now in all 5 regions. And again, on pricing, that tends to be a lagging indicator because you need the sold price. So this is where the market was basically 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks ago. I typically call it about 5 weeks ago. And because of the house prices are falling and because the interest rates are falling, the payments are also falling. And this is where I assume an 80% loan at the conforming Freddie Mac loan limits. And then here's the actual numbers where you can pick whatever county you're interested in. I have the Silicon Valley as a region. I have the Bay Area because the media talks about it so much as a region. I think it's a garbage number. And then the other 13 counties are all here. You can look at whatever metric you want. If there's a metric I'm not following that you think is valuable, reach out to me either by email or phone call or text and share it with me, and I'll investigate adding and reporting that, because I do want to report that whatever it is that you, the consumer, wants. And with that, we're finished with this week's presentation. Thank you for joining. Again, just going over it, we've been talking about the Silicon Valley real estate marketplace. We just finished the 13 micro market areas. We have this description of this earlier in the presentation, right before the 5 regions starts. Thanks for joining. I'm not seeing on any unmuted mics, so have a great week. Take care. Bye for now.